Ready to go.
All set?
Yep.
Is this all that we've got here for us? All right. Calling to order the City of Plymouth's Planning Commission meeting of March 20th, 2025. Members of the public not attending in person may submit written public comment prior to the meeting by emailing your comment to the planning clerk at dknight@cityofplymouth.org before 3:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Emailed public comments will be distributed to the commission and made part of the official record. This meeting will be recorded. Council chambers are wheelchair accessible. Special accommodations may be requested by contacting the planning clerk 72 hours in advance of the meeting. Please silence all cell phones or similar devices. Now we have the call to order, roll call.
Commissioner Nicholson,
Here.
Commissioner Shaw. Here. Vice Chair Claproth is absent tonight, and Chair Sullivan.
Here.
Thank you, we have a quorum.
All right, I'll stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next on the agenda is number 2, approval of the Planning Commission regular meeting agenda for March 20th, 2025. Is there any public comment for this item from here at City Hall? I don't see anybody. Any written public comment on anything, Dana?
I did not receive any written public comment on any of the items.
Great, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move to approve the planning commission regular meeting agenda for March 20th, 2025.
And do we have a second?
I second.
And a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Nicholson,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Chair Sullivan.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes.
All right, number 3, public comment. Under the provisions of the government code, citizens wishing to address the commission for any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time by completing and submitting a speaker submittal form to the planning clerk or following the instructions noted on this agenda. Speakers will be called by the chair at the point on the agenda when the item will be heard. Speakers should keep comments to 3 minutes or less and state their name and community of residence. Under provisions of the California Government Code, the commission is prohibited from materially discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda unless it can be demonstrated to be of an emergency nature or an urgent need to take immediate action arose from the posting of the agenda. I don't see anybody in City Hall that would like to make a public comment about anything on the agenda. So I would like to then close public comment. We'll move on to number 4, presentations and appointments. We have none.
We'll have to, was that the consent calendar that we were on, number 5?
No, we're not there yet.
Oh, okay, sorry.
All right, then number 5, the consent calendar items. All matters listed under the consent calendar are to be considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. If discussion is required, that particular item will be removed from the consent calendar and will be considered separately. So for 5.1, we have approval of the Planning Commission regular meeting minutes of February 20th, 2025. Is there anyone in City Hall that would like to make a public comment on this item? Nope. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
I move to approve the planning commission regular meeting minutes of February 20th, 2025.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Nicholson,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Chair Sullivan.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes.
And I'd like to just note that the motion was not to approve the consent calendar, it was to approve the Planning Commission regular meeting minutes of February 20th, 2025. Everybody was good with that, okay? All right. Now on to number 6, and specifically 6.1 for public hearings. We have resolution 2025-02 of the Planning Commission of the City of Plymouth recommending City Council approval of amendments to the municipal code to amend chapter 19.60 commercial and industrial districts, and chapter 19.98 glossary to allow indoor smoking with retail sales of tobacco in the village commercial zoning district. It's recommended we hold a public hearing and receive public testimony, review, discuss, and adopt a resolution. I'd like to open the public hearing. Erica?
Excuse me, sorry. Can we give Dana a second to get it up? Or get the PowerPoint up?
Sure.
Right, you can just go to the word, So back a month ago, the planning commission reviewed an appeal for a business that wanted to locate downtown and operate a establishment that would allow cigar smoking inside alongside retail sales. At that meeting, the planning commission agreed with staff that it was a use, that the use needed to be codified within the zoning ordinance, and provided staff some direction and then directed us to come back with an amendment. The reason that the meeting was a month ago is because state law has recently changed, and now for zoning ordinance amendments, the state requires that planning commission review of a zoning ordinance amendment or a rezone has a 20-day notice period rather than the standard 10 that we previously used to do and that we do for other projects. Next slide, please. So in order to allow tobacco lounges, two things needed to be done. One is we need to define what a tobacco lounge is. And so staff has come up with a definition, and basically what we are recommending is that if an establishment sells tobacco, similar retail goods and accessories, that they could then have on-site consumption of the, let's say, cigars, as long as they do allow you to purchase and take it away. So it's more of an accessory to the overall use, which is retail. So along with that, and based on some comments that we had from you, there's some requirements as far as what that cigar, let's say the cigar lounge or smoking establishment would have to have. And what we're requiring is that there is a solid separation between, if they're in a building with other uses, solid separation between them and another use. So for example, I couldn't have a window peering into a business next door and I have a smoking establishment, because obviously then the smoke will carry through. So we're requiring solid, and then the walls up to the ceiling. So again, we wouldn't want, if there's like a break between the two, obviously smoke is going to carry over into the next establishment. And that wouldn't be fair to an adjacent tenant. The other requirement that we've included is a separate HVAC system, so that it's not circulating the air between them and another person within the building. So that way, again, all the smoke within that cigar lounge really is just affecting the cigar lounge, so it's affecting their own business rather than anyone else around. Next slide, thank you. So in order to allow it, we then have to amend table 19.60, which we're proposing to, as directed by the planning commission, to allow the tobacco lounge with an administrative use permit, which means that it would come before staff. Next slide. So with that administrative use permit, a notice is sent out, if approved, to all owners or to all property owners, and we'll notify the tenants as well. Within 300 feet of that property. So what that means is, we'll give the example of the Cedar Spill. He's going to apply for a administrative use permit, fill out the application form, pay the required fee, and they're going to give us floor plans so we can see what they're doing, a statement of operations of their business so we can verify that yes, they are also just selling goods that could be consumed on site as well as off site, whatever else they may be doing. And then they'll give us information on, this is what I'm alone in the building, I'm in the building with someone else, I have my own HVAC, they'll have to kind of prove it to us. But then with that, hopefully, if it all comes back and it's okay, then I would issue a letter of approval. And then after that letter of approval, that notice would go out. And then anyone has 10 days from date of the approval to appeal it if they wanted to. And the appeal would then go to the planning commission. If for some reason the there was something strange about it, or I'd already heard concerns about it from a neighboring business, I would most likely elevate it to the planning commission for review, and that is something that both I and you too, if you wanted to, can elevate projects to the next hearing body. In a case where I felt like maybe it would get appealed, we would just send it to the planning commission first to kind of avoid time or to reduce the time and avoid it like an unnecessary step. So that is always available if me or whoever is the director in the future had concerns over anything that requires an administrative use permit. So tonight you have three options. One is to approve the proposed amendments, and it's just those two amendments really. As directed by staff, if you felt like you wanted to change anything, you can do so, and then we would work out how we're gonna change that. That's option number two. And then option number three is that if you wanted additional clarification, you wanted additional modifications beyond what we could do tonight, is to direct staff, provide direction, and we come back. Staff is recommending option number one, but you can choose whatever option you wish to do, so.
Great, thank you, and I would like to thank you guys. This was, I know it was a quick turnaround and this is very thoughtful. I read it and I thought you guys did a great job, so thank you. And so we don't have any public here. We didn't receive anything else from the applicant, correct?
No.
Means that people, I guess, are happy with what they're doing. Okay, so I can then close the public hearing and then we can discuss this as a commission. Does anyone see any issues with the proposed amendments?
No.
I don't, I agree with Mike. I want to say thank you guys for getting this done so quickly, and I think that they're very reasonable.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion regarding this then?
I move that we approve resolution 2025-02. The planning commission of the city of Plymouth recommending city council approval of the amendments to the municipal code to amend chapter 19.60 commercial and industrial districts and chapter 19.98 glossary to allow indoor smoking with retail sales of tobacco in the village commercial zoning district.
We have a second.
I second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Nicholson,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Chair Sullivan.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes.
All right, great, thanks again, you guys. On to number 7, unfinished business, we have none. And agenda item number 8, new business, 8.1. Review of modifications to existing requirements related to the objective design standards for the city of Plymouth. And as a recommendation to discuss and review the proposed amendments prior to holding a public hearing. Erica?
So yes, this is just a discussion tonight and for staff to get feedback from you as well as. It's a lot of modifications and I wouldn't want to dump them on you all at once because it does require some reading prior to the meeting. To kind of go back to what we discussed back in August, the Housing Accountability Act was passed in 1982. It's for the state of California only. And the purpose of the Housing Accountability Act was to address opposition to growth. Starting in 2017, the state began amending the Housing Accountability Act to further the purpose of it and to really strengthen its goals within the act. And we have seen changes almost every year since 2017. One of the amended sections of the Housing Accountability Act is that it limited some of the things that local governments can do as far as denying, reducing the density of a project, or making a project infeasible, as long as that project is consistent with local standards. One of the components that we're going to discuss tonight is the requirement now that cities must review residential developments with objective standards only. So objective standards involve no personal judgment and are uniformly verifiable. the reason behind this is twofold. One, it's to make it easier for an applicant to review the standard and then apply it to their project so that they can come in with plans and hopefully move quicker than they would otherwise be able to if there was a lot of judgment involved. And second, it's to really remove a city's ability to use their judgment interpretation. Because what the state found is that a lot of communities were using the vagueness that they had within their code to deny projects. So really, the state again is reaffirming that residential developments are a priority and they're limiting our ability to what we can do. The objective standards is new in the last couple of years. Up until then, most cities were using subjective, allowed staff to negotiate on a project, negotiate over design. That's been removed from us. We can only impose objective standards. And so that is what we're looking at tonight. So I've broken this up into two parts. Part one is tonight, and it's really amendments to the zoning ordinance as well as an amendment to an existing design guidelines that we have. Part two will be mixed use and multifamily design guidelines. And I should mention that the preparation of these design guidelines, the new ones, as well as the zoning ordinance amendments, was financed through a grant from the state. So the state was paid for that portion of this. So really, we have some amendments to several existing chapters, and there you can see them in your staff report. The deleted language is in strike through. I'll give you a for example, because in each one of these chapters, we have some minor modifications. So in plan development and residential agricultural zoning districts, we have some language that's crossed out. In landscape, for example, we're crossing out things where it allowed the director, the planning director, to make an interpretation. So one example would be set where landscaping is required, and it sets the parameters for where it's required, and then it says unless the planning director deems otherwise. That's too subjective, because what does that even mean? Where do I get to make that decision where it's not required? So for example, that language has been crossed out so that it's just the specific requirement. Another example would be, and this is kind of throughout, where we say should is subjective because it's not requiring something. You get should and shall are two different things. If it says shall, you have to do it. Should is open to interpretation. So anywhere where requirement says should, those are getting crossed out or replaced with shall where it can be done. Some of them, it's just too subjective, so the whole requirement gets crossed out. So for all these chapters, that's where we're doing what has been proposed within there. And I don't know if you had any comments on any of those or concerns.
I just had a question about design review. Does this basically kill design review, or how does that?
It makes it a lot harder. So, and one thing for the city of Plymouth is most of what we see is a planned development, and that is slightly different. But in any other city where I have, let's say, I have an apartment project coming in and I don't have design guidelines, I can say this is very ugly, you need to change it, and they can say I don't care, and we have to move forward. So it does make it a little bit harder, whereas there used to be more negotiation where planners could say, hey, look, we'd like to see more articulation on the building, we'd like to see some recesses. And architects would do that because they want a favorable recommendation. That's been kind of removed from our toolbox. So that is what the importance of objective design standards comes in, because then we do have some requirements, and you'll see more for part two. So you can see some of the ones that have been crafted. So we do have specifics. So for example, a specific would say, for a building that has a frontage of over 80 feet, they must have a step back of 10 feet every 40 feet of linear length. That is, that provides articulation. It's taking our old comment like the building isn't very well articulated and it's giving it a specific, the articulation becomes, there's a step back, or the articulation becomes above the third story. Every story after the third story must be step back 10 feet. It's creating articulation that way. It's very specific in how you have to craft it.
So like if you had something where you're saying you're building in our historical, your apartment complex in our historical district. And we want it to all look harmonious, you can't do that anymore, or?
The downtown is harder because we do allow for some residential uses, and then we have those like the overlay zone around it. To do what you're talking about requires a very specific set of design guidelines, and if a building was historic and they're trying to change it, that's a different path we'd have to take. But let's say it's a new building. It's very difficult in the way you have to craft the guidelines to do something to what you're talking about, and you have to be very specific. You have to have examples of very specific architecture. Unfortunately, the way the grant worked is that it was for the mixed use and multifamily design guidelines. That's what the state paid for. And under a little of that, we used some of those funds to fix some of the errors. But I couldn't use it to create new downtown design guidelines, right? And design guidelines are expensive. But it is just residential. So if a new building were to come in the downtown and it's commercial, we have much more leeway in that. And we do have some downtown design guidelines, which we can follow, and I'll get to it. But where we used to say must be compatible with the building next door, I can't say that anymore because you know, what that's very subjective. So it is hard.
Thanks.
Which then, so leads me to the next one. So we do have downtown design guidelines. Right now, they're a standalone document. I'm going to, as part of this, put the downtown together with the mixed use in the multifamily so that they're all consistently together. If a building goes into the downtown and it was a mixed use building, so we had residential and commercial, we can use both the mixed use as well as the downtown together for that building. But the hard thing with our existing standards is they are what they are. They aren't the greatest. They're from 2012, so they're pretty old at this point. But again, to redo it would be pretty cost prohibitive. We have a lot of shoulds in them. We're changing them to shall, so they have to do it. So we have those requirements changing. I added a few other changes to help us a little to require trim, recessed windows, arcades, canopies, cornices, recessed entryways, projection or tower elements to as an overall design principle to break up a building. And then no blank walls facing a public street, so we don't run into that problem. So I've added a few more just to help us out. If this was something that we really felt like we were gonna run into a problem with the downtown, we could talk about doing a full scale amendment, but the city would have to pay for it. It's hard to say. I mean, we don't have a lot of requests for projects, and this is 2012, and I don't know that there's been anything that's happened downtown since then, so it's one of those things. It's really hard. There's the cost factor with what's the benefit. But you know, we could talk about if we wanted to make more. If you felt like you wanted more changes to it at this point, you can tell me, and I can do the best I can with a couple hours, or we can leave it as is. It's really up to you. And then in the future, if there were other design guidelines that the city wanted to incorporate, we could start adding them to this design guideline document. So for example, we obviously won't have single family residential design guidelines, and most of what we do is single family residential. But again, it's at a cost to the city. So this for this update, it's really, we use the funds from the state to help us out. Now, again, we don't really have a lot of mixed use or multifamily coming in, but at least those guidelines will be in place, you know, if anything should ever come in, we do have some sites designated for multifamily. And it, you know, with the housing costs, at some point we will get something, so we have those designated. So that's what we have for the downtown. And really, it's just if you have any comments, questions, you want to provide more direction, if there's anything else you want looked at or added as part of this, you know, we can do so.
I just have a quick question. As amended, do you think that that gives you enough tools to deal with some of the proposed or future development, especially in downtown?
I don't love these downtown design guidelines. I don't find it super helpful. Could I throw in a couple hours and we kind of make a few more changes? Sure, I can do that. But to do a full scale, like revamp, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And I just don't know to what, it's so hard, I just don't know to what benefit. At this point, we have very minimal projects that come in. Most of what we see is, I mean, right now, we have 3 kind of active projects. We have Greelidge, which they're gonna develop their own design guidelines, single family residential. We have the Arco gas station, and we have a hotel. 2 of those things are commercial, so these, the downtown design guidelines could maybe apply to Arco, but we're too late right now because they're complete. But sure, there are things that could be in here. It's hard.
I guess my opinion is it's only a couple hours to kind of help you get to that next step. I think that might be worthwhile, just my 2 cents. I'm not sure what else thinks so, but it definitely we have an opportunity to kind of address some issues before they're here. It might be a good idea.
Yeah, but we can also talk about, we could do like a couple hours here to kind of clean some of it up, and then we could always, if we wanted to later on, for the downtown, kind of talk about, do we wanna do an amendment to require certain things within the design guidelines, so like parameters for outdoor seating, parameters for you know, certain minor things that we could still clean up at that point too, if we wanted to. And or just kind of roll along and see where we're at. Again, I don't have that many projects that come in. If all of a sudden we started getting an increase in the amount of things that we're seeing for improvement wise downtown, you know, we could cross that bridge then. Just,
Yeah, I think cleaning some things up might be great, but we also don't wanna put in, you know, we don't have people knocking our doors down with stuff in town, so, you know, I don't think we wanna do put barriers either and make something so complicated or restrictive that people go, well, I'll just go to Amber City and Sutter Creek because I can do something there.
yeah.
So I think there's probably a balance we need to look at.
It is hard because there is a fine line between encouraging people to move into the downtown for existing buildings and maybe what we require them to do. But then a new building, you know, is a different story, right? So there is a fine line between all of that, especially for this downtown where we seem to have vacancies and other things. I wouldn't want to get too strict on a guideline for an existing business that wants to improve a portion.
Great, thank you.
That's kind of, unless you guys have more direction for me, that's all I have for tonight. I will mention that part 2 will come up next, and that will be the harder one because they're brand new, so you've never seen them. And then I'll probably include some tweaks to the downtown, just a few tweaks to see if we can get some more guidelines for new buildings. But I don't know when that will be scheduled, but we'll try to do it soon, because then the next step would be public hearing for everything all at once. And then we'd have to go to council, because it is zoning ordinance.
Yeah, I think once we hear part 2 and we, you know, with this explanation, I understand it more than I did reading this for the meeting. You know, we might come up with some things, but
Yeah.
I think right now, I'm not contemplating any further direction at this point. Anybody else?
No.
All right, great, thank you very much. Is there anyone in City Hall that would like to make a public comment? I don't see anybody who's walked in since we started that, so there's no vote needed on this, so we'll move on to number 9, which is reports. Any reports from the commissioners?
None for me.
None for me.
And I don't have any either. Next would be the planning director. Any reports or anything, updates or anything like that for us?
We did not get certified by the state for our housing element, but it's a very minor change. So I'm not very concerned, but it will require the consultant to change a portion of the document. I'm just waiting to see on how long that's gonna take. You won't see it again though. It'll just go from the consultant. We'll check it. It'll go right to the state. So it's very minor.
This might be a Margaret question, but either of you guys, do we get, with the housing element, I guess it's a state mandated program, do we get SB 90 money or anything to do this, or is this all on our bill?
We did receive funds, the county received funds and the county used the funds to do the countywide housing element. But for the most part, cities are paying for it all.
Alright. Anything new on any of the projects in town?
The hotel remains incomplete, Greenwich remains incomplete. And ARCO, we're just waiting on the mitigated negative declaration to be completed by the consultant, okayed by the city attorney, and then it will go out for public review for 30 days.
Great, any questions at all? Anything from the city staff, Margaret, Dana, anything?
Nope.
All right, great. Is that it? Anybody, anything else? Nobody's locked in? Nobody emailed any comments or anything? So I guess we are good to adjourn the meeting at 7:05 PM.